Hey guys, Robo here. I know it's been a minute since we've had a chat, but I assure you I am still alive and well, and I haven't completely disappeared. I've just been swamped in my personal life and professional life. I just haven't had a ton of time for YouTube content as per sort of normal for the last little while. And actually on that note, as a continuation, it also means I haven't done a ton of shooting lately. Now with that being said, while I haven't hit the live range too much or as much as I've wanted to as of recent, I am still doing a ton of Dryfire. Those of you who have watched my channel for quite some time, you'll know I've advocated for Dryfire practices at home. I do think it's an integral part of skills development when it comes to firearms. So I've been doing a ton of that in lieu of hitting the range as much as I've wanted. And that's actually what I'm here to talk to you guys quickly about today. And more specifically, I'm actually here to talk about this little guy with you guys today. And this is the TitanX by Mantis X. It's their brand new, I guess, Dryfire shot analysis tool. Falls in line with the rest of Mantis X's products. So I'll give you a breakdown of the TitanX, its features, that sort of thing when it comes to the whole Mantis system. More importantly, I'll give you some insight in how I've been using it lately, as well as giving you some of my honest thoughts about what it does well, what I think it can improve, what sort of gap does it fill, and specifically what are the limitations when it comes to the application of filling that gap. So I guess let's just jump into it. We'll cover the features first. So as I'd mentioned, this is called the TitanX. It's by Mantis X, and essentially it's a Mantis X wrapped into a training pistol that has automatic trigger reset and a laser indicator to mark your shots in physical reality, all while the Mantis portion is tracking analytics of the use of the Dryfire training item and linking it to the Mantis app on, say, your phone or an iPad or whatever have you. Now, the biggest difference, obviously, is that this Mantis device is not a device that goes on, say, the accessory rail like previous generations, or I shouldn't say previous generations, just different products like the X10. This sort of follows, sort of conceptually, as a continuation of Mantis's Blackbeard X system, which is for rifles and such, right, where it replaces the bolt, and the Mantis system is in, say, the mag, right? So you put the mag in the mag well, and then the bolt replacement piece is a mechanical functioning item that actually resets your hammer and your trigger press. Now the difference here is, instead of a bolt replacement, because obviously in a pistol there is no bolt to replace, that resetting trigger is actually inside the actual item itself in the trigger. So it literally just resets itself and counts as a trigger press. Obviously in a real firearm, if you're doing dry fire, every trigger press requires a slide rack. And that's actually what the Blackbeard system sort of solved, right? So instead of racking a rifle every single time, the replacement bolt function to do the racking for you. And that's similar here in the TitanX. Because the trigger resets itself, right? You're not racking anything. And quite frankly, this whole thing is made out of plastic. This is not a moving slide, so there is nothing to rack in the first place. Now, the other thing that the TitanX brings to the table is that it comes with removable weighted magazines. So it comes with 2 of these. And the whole reason for that is to do mag changes while using a Mantis device. So obviously with the X10 and on a real firearm, you can do all the mag changes you want. It's just, again, you're racking between each sort of cycle of dry fire. The inclusion of magazines now opens up the ability of the dry fire user to actually incorporate reloads into the Mantis environment, i.e. it's a feature inside the app and inside the drills now too. So basic features here. So obviously you're seeing right here, it's modeled after a Glock 17. I have no idea if Mantis is going to bring out other models. I assume that if this has a good uptake amongst the firearms crowd, they'll then investigate other models to sort of facsimile and put out as a TitanX sort of model. It does have a Glock replica trigger here. So again, it's nearly identical to the Glock trigger I've got on my real Glock. It does feature an optics plate here. So I've got obviously my plate off and I've got this hollow stuck on there. Just like a real firearm, if you're not using an optic on here, you can install that plate and just use your irons. Now, also just like a real Glock, there's ambidextrous mag release. So again, if you're lefty, you just move the push button to the opposite side, just like a real Glock. And just like in a real Glock, it does feature an accessory rail, things like lights and whatnot. If you want to have have those things on for realism of your dry fire, depending on how your actual pistol set up. Now, other features that have nothing to do with it being a dry fire pistol, it does have a USB-C charging port, and that's obviously just to charge the internal battery. It does have a little push button here for syncing to the Mantis app, as well as engaging the aiming laser, so you can zero that aiming laser. It does feature windage and elevation adjustment that you can tune with an Allen key that comes with the package for shot placement downrange based on the distance that you are dry firing at. And as I'd mentioned before, it does come with 2 of these weighted magazines. And I'll have more to touch on about that later in terms of my opinions or limitations section. But the weight on this is approximately, as far as I can kind of, tell by feel, is approximately the same weight as, say, like a fully loaded Glock 17 mag, and it does add at least a little bit of weight to this. Again, this is constructed entirely of plastic, so right there off the bat, that's sort of a difference from a real Glock, obviously. Now, with all that to say about the actual training pistol, obviously being a Mantis device, it connects with the phone app, right? And the phone app essentially is the thing that tracks all the analytics coming out of the Mantis during your dry fire training, and then it also offers a ton of, drills to actually practice dry fire too, right? Everything from dynamic drills to transition drills like, LPRES and things like that, to just open training. Inside the app, Mantis also features a ton of courses, right? So from basic to advanced marksmanship, they've got some concealed carry courses, they've got, say, combat courses and whatnot, and all of it's different drills to sort of practice different skills under different contexts. And you pass the course and you get like a little award badge and yippee me, I'm a good shooter or something like that, right? Now, I won't harp too much on the app. Mantis has been out for a really long time. Everybody knows the app. I've covered it in previous reviews of Mantis products, but again, this thing hooks up to that. That's the entire purpose of a Mantis device, inclusive of the TitanX. So with the TitanX sort of covered broadly in terms of the features or what it is, let's get back to how I've been using it, right? So obviously I'm a big advocate of dry fire. So yes, I've been using it to supplement my dry fire training or practice at home because I haven't had a ton of time to go to the range. But even more so, I'd also said to you that the reason why I'm not producing a ton of content is I'm also extremely busy in my sort of personal/professional life. And that's because I now work at a night vision company, and it's a night vision company you guys have heard me talk about before. It's where I get my night vision. It's called OPFOR Night Solutions here in Canada. I'm now their media manager. So a lot of the stuff I've been doing these days is behind the scenes producing night vision content for our profiles and for our business partners and things like that. So with that little bit of background, how I've been lately using my TitanX is actually with these bad boys. So these are my night vision goggles. They're the OPFOR Night Solutions NVG-ALPHA, okay? I used to run 1431s. I just switched to the Alpha. Yes, there will be a comparison / review / my thoughts video on that. Even though I work for the company, I do have my independent sort of thoughts about that. So neither here nor there. That's for a future video. But I've been very much so doing a ton of practice with dry fire under nods, just to practice that as an extra skill set beyond just dry fire. In a second here, there'll be some B-roll that runs showing you some of that footage, both from an external view of me, i.e. a camera view, while I'm doing dry fire training, as well as a POV through the night vision goggles of what that experience is as well. Now, quick heads up for those of you just about to watch the POV footage in this little section. Yes, the targets downrange are blurry. That's because I've got my nods set to infinity focus and I'm shooting targets up close. I didn't want to change the focus or add irises because I actually wanted to train under the conditions by which I'm usually running around with night vision, which is infinity focus. That's just a quick note. Here's some B-roll. Probably the most important part of this video, or what you guys are most interested in past just learning the basics about the TitanX, is what are my opinions. So like I said, this came out in November. Mantis X reached out to me. I've reviewed their stuff in the past, so they said, hey Rob, do you want to maybe get a TitanX and check it out, use it for a while, do a little review for us, or offer your thoughts? I obviously said yes. So I do have some opinions, and what I'll do is I'll start with just my overall, right? My overall opinion, and maybe just some of the comparison factors against, say, a real Glock, or how this does its job pretty well in that regard. Now, I mentioned earlier, this is pretty much a one-to-one facsimile of a real Glock 17. I measured it, next to my actual Glock 17. I don't see anything that's sort of out of spec or whatnot. The trigger's the same shape, size, trigger angle. The grip angle's the same. The general shape is the same size, obviously the same shape, right? Now, the reason why I think it does an overall good job at what its mission statement is, which is a dry-fire training laser pistol with a Mantis system all in one package with a resetting trigger. So it's a bunch of things all wrapped into one, and I think it does a pretty good job at that. Now, because the whole system is predicated on that resetting trigger, really, okay, let me make some comments on that. I did a lot of comparisons between my actual Glock pistol and this. Now, obviously, this doesn't have a firing pin, right? So the experience of pressing the trigger on this and the audible sounds and some of the feel, right, the mechanical feel of a real pistol aren't there. Now, I'll be honest, my original argument when I got this, when speaking with friends, I was just like, the trigger's super different. And I think I was actually letting the mechanical and auditory sort of experience from shooting a real pistol cloud my judgment on the pistol at first. Now that I've had some time to use the TitanX, approximately 2 months, I've actually sort of learned to ignore the audible mechanical cues, and instead, when I was trying to really determine how this trigger experience is for me, I started looking at the things that sort of really are the experience with a real Glock trigger, and that is, how does the wall feel, number one? How does the actual break feel? And I don't mean like anything that moves up in the slide on a real Glock and whatnot, and how the reset happens. And I gotta say, it's pretty close, okay? Or I should say this, it's pretty close to a non-scientifically measured sort of perceptual degree when I use it. And what I mean by that is, in my experience, doing the comparisons, it feels like the break happens at about equal pressure to what a real Glock does when you press against that wall. In that regard, it's actually a pretty one-to-one experience, as long as, again, I'm not allowing the other sort of tail end things after the break sort of cloud that judgment. And with that experience being pretty close to what I experienced with my real Glock pistol, the simple fact that it resets opens up a whole world of possibilities in terms of dry fire. Not having that intermediary step of racking the action again, whether we're talking about a rifle or a pistol in this case, I find pretty monumental, right? Like actually practicing at speed like you would on a live range is completely different than racking a pistol slide between each dry fire shot, even though you might be practicing a skill set within pistol shooting, being pressing the trigger part. The other thing that I think the TitanX brings to the game is obviously, again, the mag change part, right? It's a part of dry fire that, again, I was doing it anyways with Mantis systems like the X10, or whatever I pointed to here. I just mean on the accessory rail. But the ability to integrate that into the Mantis app, right, for drills, the courses, things like that, is awesome. It just goes that one extra step to being sort of a full spectrum dry fire practice tool, rather than just being able to practice one function of, say, the firearms manual of arms. So all of that being essentially a long-winded way of saying that now that I've used it for a while, yes, I do find it helpful. I do think this is a great, I guess, next step in the Mantis system. That being said, I do have some opinions about some of the limitations or things for you to consider. And I don't mean things to consider as a reason to maybe not add a dry fire training tool, but things to consider should you purchase this in terms of applying it to your training. So first and foremost, the most immediate thing I'll just call to attention, and that is, this is made of plastic, okay? There is no metal slide on top. There is a very noticeable difference in weight between this, the TitanX, a facsimile of a Glock 17, and my actual Glock 17. And duh, it's because there's not a big hunk of metal that sits on top of the gun. Some of this is balanced out by the fact that these magazines are weighted, but really, you're gonna get this and it's going to be, not surprisingly, okay, but it's gonna be noticeably lighter than even an empty Glock 17. So the question begs there, like, I mean, how does that apply to my dry fire training? And it might not. It's a different weight of a device, okay? So one could argue if you dry fire, practice, whatever the name you want to call it, enough, what you're doing is teaching your body a set of actions in the physical world based on a particular tool, right? So one could argue that by pushing this thing around and aiming this thing, when you go to your real Glock, you might be a little bit slower, you might get a little bit more tired, right? And maybe I'm crazy and there's no perceivable change to, say, your splits and all that fun stuff, or your over travel through transitions, all that sort of thing, but it is something to note. This is very much different in weight than a real firearm, even with the magazine in. Sort of along those lines, being different than a Glock or a real Glock, obviously the slide doesn't reciprocate in this, right? There is no explosion happening inside of a chamber, inside of a barrel, and there are no felt recoil forces to shoot a slide back and forth, and no action to load a new round into the chamber. This is just a plastic training pistol. So one could argue I might be able just to press this all friggin' day as fast as I want, and what I'm missing out on, right? If I was on a live range, if I were to shoot this quickly all willy-nilly, I might miss everything, right? Because I'm not letting sight settle and I'm not getting my sight picture back again and whatnot. So you have to understand, when you're dry fire training with this, there's a part of your brain that needs to contextualize that as, hey, I'm missing a big piece of this experience, or at least that piece of the experience, and account for that in your training. Meaning, hey, I got to spend some extra time when I'm on a live range practicing that part beyond just my trigger presses with live rounds. All right, back to something about weight. And that was something I mentioned earlier, which is the weight of these magazines. Again, cool, they're weighted. It adds a bit of weight to the training pistol. I think more the reason why these are weighted is to assist with mag changes, like so the actual magazine drops out of the gun. Now, that is a double-edged sword, okay? And that is, so during dry fire training, a consistently dropping mag is pretty nice, right? But the fact is, the state of this mag never changes, right? In a real magazine loaded with 17 rounds, or however many your magazine holds if you got extendos or whatever, right? Those bullets have weight, right? And as you expend those rounds, the magazine gets lighter, funny enough, right? Because it is just a hunk of plastic. In a real world live fire training scenario, as I'm expending those rounds, this mag's getting lighter. We've all experienced it. A mag that isn't heavy enough to drop under its own weight because something's dirty in the pistol grip, or just the position of the magazine when you engage the magazine release, et cetera, right? Again, we've all been there, stuck mag. That is different than the experience here, okay? So when I'm dry fire training with this, as I'm changing magazines, these always fall out. So there needs to be that accounted for as well in your live fire training. You have to be prepared to have this induced malfunction, the magazine not falling out during real live reloads, that you just will not get with the TitanX, okay? This will not prepare you for those. These will fall away every single time, which is cool for training. Makes you feel like a badass to never screw that up, but it's not entirely realistic, right, to reality. And the last final thing I got an opinion on, and that is just what you see here. It is obviously a Glock 17 replica. Like I said in the intro, I have no idea at this point. I just haven't asked the question of my contacts at Mantis, and I haven't seen anything out there in the interwebs that say that they're producing this in other models. So if you're not a Glock 17 guy, let's figure out what impact that has on your dry fire training while using this, right? This is modeled after a Glock. If you use, say, a SIG, you're gonna have different grip angles, different triggers, all that fun stuff, different sights, right? So theory holds, if I spend a ton of time practicing on this Glock and I go over to one of my SIGs, say for example, I might have built up some natural training scars that, you know, during presentation, my grip angle, all that fun stuff might be wicked off. I'm gonna be searching for optics, etc., right? That's no different than if you practice on one gun live fire for a really long time and then switch to something second day, right? You're gonna be thrown off. It's the same thing with this. This is a great tool for dry firing. And there's, you know, concepts, I guess I could argue that, you know, as you're learning trigger press, there's fundamentals in there that carry over from trigger to trigger. The very specific experience of training with this, though, is best left to those that are replicating a Glock 17 live fire use case. So one small opinion on this is just very minor. Obviously, this isn't a real gun, so there's no real chamber recess here, or ejection port, I should say, recess. It's where the USB charging port is, you know, a mold sort of section here to replicate the apparent shape, but it doesn't have the same depth to it. So if you're like me and you use something, say like a ALS system, right, which actually locks onto a pistol using the depth of that ejection port, just means when you're using your ALS with this, like I do, it just won't officially lock in. It seats into the holster fine. It just doesn't lock using the ALS. So when I'm drawing, I'm still hitting my ALS toggle, etc. Again, I'm keeping my training consistent. It's just not actually doing anything on the gun. And those are my opinions on just the sort of the limitations, the things to consider when applying the TitanX. But overall, my application of this is just a continuation of, I guess, my fanboy service of the Mantis products. I've really enjoyed using Mantis products. I'm a big data guy. There's obviously the perceptual sort of experience when dry firing, even live fire training. The data from Mantis X just helps me sort of contextualize that and sort of target things that I think I might need to work on a little bit better than if it was just my brain trying to figure out while I'm shooting a gun. So for those of you who are into Mantis products, especially the Glock 17 boys, this may be the next thing that you buy to supplement your dry fire. Again, understanding all those limitations and, you know, applying dry fire concepts correctly and all that fun stuff. The TitanX might be the perfect tool for that. It's allowed me to enhance my supplementation of my dry fire even more than, say, the Blackbeard or the X10 before that. So like I said, it's just continuing that sort of, what should I say, positive experience that I've had applying Mantis products to my training regimen. So like all good reviews, I gotta tell you the basic part, right? So what is this gonna cost me? I was actually surprised at the price point, to be quite frank. So it's only $199, and that's $199 USD. So for Canadians, jack up the price by like 30% or whatever. Tariffs are involved, who knows? But in any case, it's $199. So for an entire training pistol, you know, with the laser marker, mag reload integration piece, the resetting trigger, it's about equal to what I was used to paying for, say, an X10 back in the day, right? Which just attaches to a pistol. You gotta have a pistol of your own to attach that to. So it's actually a pretty good deal in my experience, right? Over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen a lot of training products being sort of hawked on the market. I think this is the closest out of any product out there, in my opinion. The reason why I say that is this isn't anything novel, okay? It's just a good amalgamation of all the features that, you know, some of the best or, you know, top dry fire training tools out there. It's a laser designator, right? So it's one of those little bullet lasers. It's a Mantis product. It's one of those magazines that resets your trigger for you in your pistol. And this is all those things wrapped into one. So instead of having to go out and buying that laser bullet and the magazine that resets your trigger and all that sort of stuff at individual costs, it's all wrapped into one package for $199. It's a pretty good deal. So that basically covers it, guys. TitanX, totally rad. Check it out if you're interested. If you have any questions, obviously just reach out to me, drop a comment. I will get to those, I promise. I'm not that disappeared in my life. Now, a couple things into the future. Like I said, I am working for a night vision company. If you want to check them out, address here down below. It's nightsolutions.ca. We build night vision. We sell night vision accessories. We sell tactical accessories. So check us out there. In accordance with that, like I said at the beginning of my intro, I just switched over to the NVG-ALPHAs, okay, from my 1431 Mark IIs. I do still have my 1431 Mark II, so I'm going to be producing a video where I do a comparison where the improvements of the NVG-ALPHA housing sort of hit over where the 1431s left off. If you guys do have any ideas for content and such, again, I don't have a lot of time to sort of brainstorm my own stuff because I'm doing a lot of media content for OPFOR Night Solutions. Drop them in the comments below. I'd love the cheat sheet of knowing maybe what you guys want to see when I randomly post content. But beyond that, guys, until next time, thanks for letting me rant about the TitanX and showing you how I use it and hearing my opinions, all that fun stuff. Check out my Instagram, it's RoboMurray. Until next time, have an awesome day. Thank you for listening to me rant, and see you next time. Cheers.